I have had a month. I don't know how many people are going to actually care about this. I'm sure at least one person will, which is why I'm making this, really. I've been trying to post on this channel 3 times a week. Saturday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And that's been my schedule. I did write it down. I try not to make too much of a big deal of it because I know I do struggle with it. And this month I just haven't been. Here's the explanation as to why. So if you're disinterested in my ducks, if you're disinterested in my health, bye. See you again for more Sims videos. But the long story made short is impact on me. I think it has a bad impact. I think it has a bad impact on most people, but when I was 15-ish, 14, 15, I got ill. I'm not going to get too into it at the moment, but I got ill and I ended up with a diagnosis of myalgic encephalomyelitis. It's really difficult to pronounce. We just call it ME. America sometimes calls it chronic fatigue syndrome. It's shitty. Stress makes it worse. Generally speaking, it's a bad time. It's a bad time all around. And it means that I've spent my whole life trying to tackle the fact that stress makes it worse. Stress makes the fatigue flare up. Stress makes everything harder. And yeah. So also for about that long, but before that maybe, my family have had ducks. And we've always had Campbell Whites, which are, if I say ducks, you'll either think of a mallard or a Campbell White, really. They're the big-ish yellow-white ducks with yellow bills and yellow-orange feet. And they're the kind of thing you think of when you think of ducks. And my mom did her research and she looked into it, and there's those and there's also call ducks. So whereas you've got Campbell Whites are like this big, on average, call ducks tend to be really tiny. But call ducks never shut up. They don't lay many eggs. And at the end of the day, if you're going to have ducks, you kind of want eggs as well. So we ended up with 3 Campbell White ducks when I was about 12 or 13. Around the same time that we had a dog. We got our dog, who is no longer with us, sadly, but he had a good life. And over the years, we've lost ducks and we've got more ducks. And there's always been sort of a rotation of having ducks. We've had about maybe 5 batches of ducks in the last coming up to 20 years. Like it's been good. Like it's been a good, like I say, they've had a good life. They've had a good go of it, just like the dog did. So a couple of years ago, we went, not a couple of years ago, shit, it would have been longer than that, 6 or 7 years ago, I think. We went to the place to get ducklings, and my mom was looking at these lovely little Campbell White ducklings about this big, and my dad and I noticed this gorgeous little brown duckling that had somehow ended up in with the Campbell Whites. And this little duckling was an Indian runner. My mom's always loved Indian runners. I didn't know much about them, but they are adorable. Where most ducks sort of have their bellies quite low, Indian runners like stand upright. And my dad and I were like, we want that duck. We want that duck. And my mom was like, instead of one of these other ducklings? And we're like, no, we want that duck. So we ended up coming home with, I think it was 4 ducklings, including Tali, and this little Indian runner called Coco. And I loved that duck. But because they lived outside, I didn't see them a lot. Because I've been unwell, my sleep is reserved. My sleep is reversed, so I tend to wake up mid-afternoon. I go to bed early morning, and because of that, I don't really see much of them. They used to come out they have a run, they have a nice big run, and they'd come out for an hour or so a day to wander around the garden. They have a nice safe life, happy life. Longer in the summer, less time in the winter. They have a lot of room in their run to move around. always water and all the rest of it. But I never really got to know them very well because they were outside. And then at the end of August last year, we went over to buy some more ducklings because we only had 2 ducks left. Most of them had died of old age, or to be fair, I feel like ducks don't, I don't know, they everything I read about them, the more research I do, it seems like they die a lot more than I wish they would. And so we only had 2 left, Tali and Vi. Vi being about 11 years old, Tali being about 8 this year, I think. And we went over to get these little ducklings, and my dad forgot something in the car, so he went back, and my mom and I went across with this guy, of course in masks and all the rest of it because of COVID. This was August 2021, and because of COVID, we couldn't go into the hatching sheds. So instead of him taking us over directly into like the Campbell White's hatching sheds, he took us into like the area where they were all wandering around, and he had such a variety of ducks. And we went with the intention of getting 2 Indian runners, 3 Indian runners and 3 Campbells. And my mom and I spotted this black duck. I mean, there was quite a few black ducks, and we were like, oh my god, that's like a black iridescent duck, that's amazing. And the guy was like, oh yeah, we've got cayugas as well. I'm like, what? And something was said, and I don't know what it was, and suddenly he was like, how many ducks do you want? And we're like, oh, about 6. We were thinking of having 3 runners and 3 Campbells, or was it 2 runners and 4 Campbells? I don't know, it doesn't really matter. And he was like, hold on. And the next thing we knew, he had just flung these ducks at us, and we ended up with 1 Campbell White, 1 khaki Campbell, 1 cayuga, 1 Swedish Blue, 1 brown Indian runner, and 1 white Indian runner. And he put them all in the box for us, and we were just absolutely swept away by how cute they were and how great they were. And it was only once we were back in the car on the way home, we were like, how did we end up with all these different ducks instead of what we went for? But we were really happy about it. Sadly, the little white runner, she wasn't well from the get-go. I could hear her sneezing and wheezing all the way home. It happens. They're not always born, perfect. She was perfect, but that's beside the point. And we lost her after a couple of weeks. But because of the fact that I was feeling better, and I am feeling better, I'm more of a functional human being last few years, I had more time with them. And because I'm an adult, so I can help participate in looking after them. And so we spent, I think, 2 months with these little babies, and then we introduced them to the outside ducks. Around that time, bird flu was coming. We didn't know yet, but it was. And we tried to get the babies to go outside. But whereas the other ducks we'd had were about 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, these were tiny little 4-week-old ducks. And they decided they did not want to go outside, thank you. And they absolutely refused. They downright refused. And so they ended up staying inside, and we got them a bigger box to live in inside. And they're really happy. They're really happy. And so I've become really attached to them. Really attached to them. And if you don't know about ducks, birds in general have a short shelf life at times. Sometimes they can live a really long time, and other times things just sneak up and just knock them off. It's devastating. We used to have cockatiels, and we had 1 male cockatiel who we had for I think 20 years, and all his mates died around him. And it was really sad because birds just struggle. I don't know why exactly. That's just been my experience with them. We had these babies in the house, and then unfortunately when bird flu came along, we could no longer let Tali and Vi, or the babies, outside. So Tali and Vi used to live in their covered duck house and run. And then they and the babies would come out for like a walk around, and then they'd go back into their separate homes. The babies would come into this house, and Tali and Vi would go back to their home. But we could no longer do that, so the babies couldn't go outside anymore. Tali and Vi had to be carried in every day for exercise and socialization, but a lot of the time they didn't want to come in, and I said, stop forcing it. You're gonna make them resent you and make them unhappy. Like put down a rule in your own head of how often they need to come in, but don't force them twice a day, every day. You'll exhaust them and you will make them miserable and resentful and unhappy, and they clearly don't like it. So Mom tried to back off a bit from them, which was good. And we started bringing them in for baths because of course they didn't have access to water properly, they couldn't get clean and all the rest of it. So we brought them in for baths, and all that was great. And then at the end of February, Vi died. And it had nothing to do with bird flu or anything like that. She was just old. And Mom opened the duck house door and she'd put her bill into her wings and she'd just gone overnight, which was absolutely devastating. But I'm very grateful for the fact I got to spend a lot of time with her. So after that, we couldn't really leave Tali outside on her own. So we brought Tali in. This is where the story gets a bit difficult and why March has been a complete wash for me. So Tali has always had a bit of an attitude problem. She tended to bully Vi if she ate too much or too long, or I don't know, she's had an attitude problem for a while. I think she's out of her depth. I think she struggles and she's out of her depth, and she likes sleep and she likes rest, and everything is just a bit much, but she struggles. And she's been attacking the babies. So she's in a separate box, and although they're together, she is gently segregated off until she learns to behave better. Plus, there's not a lot of room in the box for another duck, and she's a big duck. She's a big girl. So, she so like the second week of March, I think, I was sitting here minding my own business, and my mom we put the babies to bed at about 10 p.m. ish, and then we wake them up about 6:30, which is not ideal, and we've started working on ways of giving them extra darkness, but it has to fit into my mom's schedule, it has to fit into my schedule, and all the rest of it. So I sit here all night long, and then at about 6:15 or 6:30 on the weekends, my mom comes upstairs and she's like, "Oh, you ready to come and see them?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I'm just sitting here minding my own business. I missed bedtime the night before because I was really tired, and my mom comes upstairs and she looks haggard. She looks awful. I'm like, "What the fuck happened to you?" And she's like, "I'm really scared that Maple's not going to be there." So Maple is the little khaki Campbell. And apparently the night before, Tali had attacked her, grabbed her by the back of the neck, and was like throwing her around the kitchen. Tali had, of course, immediately been moved elsewhere. Maple had been looked after, but she was really out of it. She was in shock. She was traumatized, as you can probably imagine. I mean, none of the babies have a mean bone in their bodies. They don't tend to fight back. They don't tend to anything like that. The worst they get is that Lapis, who we think is actually a drake, she tends to attack Vanilla because she's randy, not because of any sort of meanness. She just gets a little enthusiastic, and we have started doing something about that because it's getting a bit much. So we went downstairs, and Maple was fine, but it was very stressful and very scary. And then a week later, I picked Maple up in the morning, and it felt like holding a jellyfish. If you haven't been around birds, specifically ducks, but birds in general, there's a way that they hold their feathers, and if they relax completely, if they just like let them go, the feathers sort of lift up a bit, and there's no like rigidity to them. It just sort of is. They seem to be able to control every single feather individually. I think they can. And so when they ruffle up, all the feathers stand up and things like that. So when you pick up a duck that's not holding her feathers, it feels wrong. It feels terrifying. I thought she was going to die in my arms. Her jaw was clenched. It was not really clenched. She was sort of like constantly, like she was sort of in pain, and it was sort of tight but not fully closed. It was really weird. Her eyes, instead of being, because ducks are usually like this, her eyes are like this, and she felt like picking up a jellyfish. I was so terrified that she was about to die on me. I phoned my dad because I thought he would want to come downstairs and say goodbye to her. It was an incredibly traumatic morning, actually. She wouldn't eat, but she would drink. She was dragging herself around trying to follow the other babies around, but having difficulty with it. She went into what we call the office, which is like a study where the computers used to be. My dad's computer is still in there, but mine is now up here. She went in there, and I found her in time to see that she tried to climb over my dad's, the spoke of my dad's chair. She tripped instead of just climbing, flattened herself across the spoke with her feet up, and just lay there. I picked her back up, and again, I thought she was going to die in my arms. She didn't, for which I was deeply grateful and so relieved. And then she sat with my dad, and they watched the X-Files together, and she laid an egg. And once she laid an egg, she was fine. We realised, looking back, she was poorly egg-bound. We think it was brought on by stress. So we think it was stress and trauma. And then the next day, Raptor, who is the Indian runner, she went through something similar. I was fucking terrified then as well. And then everything was okay. And then Sunday comes around. So the egg that Raptor laid on, I think it was the Thursday, it might have been the Friday. Raptor's really quite small. She's a small, slender duck. And the egg she laid was gigantic, and there's a tiny bit of blood on it. One of the things that can kill a duck is a prolapse. Don't Google that. Don't Google a prolapse on a duck. You will regret the photos that come up. Simply put, it's when the insides come out with the egg. It's not good, it's bad, it's terrifying. There are bad prolapses and there are passable prolapses, and I have watched a duck die of a bad prolapse, and I will never get that image out of my head. So we took them for a bath, and they needed their claws trimming. So what we do is my mom holds the duck upside down. Most of the ducks just relax because they really like being held that way. I don't know why. Shadow goes to sleep. Shadow's the cayuga. Shadow goes to sleep. Lapis sits there going, why? But is really quite comfortable. Vanilla makes prolonged eye contact with me, which is really funny. She just lies there with my mom holding her, and she's just like, I am watching you. If you snip my claws wrong, you'll have to look at me while you do it. So I'm just like, Jesus Christ, Vanilla, okay. Raptor flails. She's happy to be upside down and held, but she tends to flail her feet around. Maple just goes relaxed for my mom because Maple loves my mom so much. So my mom holds them upside down, and then I hold their little feet and I trim the nails down because they can't go out at the moment. They can't grind the nails down on like the slabs and stuff like that, so they have to have their nails trimmed. Mom is nervous about it. I have more confidence, so I do the trimming, Mom does the holding. And so we turn them all upside down, we turn Talia upside down, we turn Shadow upside down, everything's fine. We turn Raptor upside down, and she has a tiny prolapse. And you're not really supposed to be able to even see a duck's bum. You shouldn't see it, it should just be covered up by the feathers. And I could see it, and I could see this little prolapse. So we took a deep breath, trimmed her nails, toweled her off, gave her cuddles, had another quick look, put her down, let her do what she was doing. So she was grooming, tidying up after the bath. I get my phone out and I start Googling. And basically we are very lucky. She is very lucky that we caught it. She could have easily died from it. So what we had to do was we had to put her in the dark. We had to separate her from the others so that no one would like try and chew it or try and help. We had to put her in the dark to convince her body that it was winter, so she shouldn't be laying. We had to starve her for 24 hours so her body would think, oh shit, I'm not getting food, I will not lay. And then for the next, I think it was until the Thursday, 6 times a day, we were feeding her. After the 24 hours, we were feeding her less protein and less calcium in the hopes that she wouldn't develop an egg. We were trying really hard. And then 6 times a day, we were turning her upside down, gently pushing the prolapse back in, which is horrible and unpleasant for everyone involved, and applying a little bit of honey, because honey is really good, really healing, really good for injuries and all the rest of it. She hated it, but she was such a good girl. She's genuinely such a good girl. Unbelievably good. I was really worried that she would be less affectionate, she'd be sort of traumatized by it, but no, she's still affectionate, she still loves her, she still trusts us. Very appreciated. At one point I leant back and she climbed. She always finds a little bit of tummy to stand on. I don't know how she does it because I don't really have a tummy, but I lean back and she always finds this little tiny shelf of tummy to stand on. So she's standing here. And I don't know what happened, but I moved a little bit. I just knocked my desk again. But I moved a little bit, so I sort of flattened out my chest. And she climbed all the way up until she was standing here. Flattened out across here, buried her face, and just stayed there as close as she could get. She was really clingy. So we were making sure she was still getting some socialization, but as previously stated, we think Lapis is a drake, and although currently she seems like a very inaccurate drake, the last thing we wanted to do was expose her to Raptor and her get accurate and cause damage. So she had to be mostly separated from them. We mostly let her wander around with Vanilla because Vanilla doesn't try anything, and because it was safer and they could. Maple tends to bite butts. And she went for the honey a couple of times, so Maple had to be kept away for the most part. So for a very large chunk of time, me, sleep reversed, tends to go to bed at about 8 a.m. and sleep until like mid to late afternoon. I was having to get up 6 a.m, 10:30-ish, 1-ish, 2:30, 3 o'clock-ish, 6 p.m-ish, and then bedtime for the ducks at like 10 p.m-ish to check on Raptor and all the rest of it. I have been running on fumes. I have been absolutely exhausted. So we did that. We were feeding her rather than the duck food, because the duck food is layers pellets. The duck food is everything they need. All the nutrients and everything they need for healthy eggs, healthy ducks. And they're good. Like, it's good. You can tell by the size of a couple of the ducks that they are getting what they need. But if she gets too much of what she needs, she will produce eggs. So we took her off the layers pellets and we were feeding her cooked wild rice, quinoa, a variety of vegetables, potato, her favourite. We had to take the potato out of her meal because she'd pick all the potato out, eat the potato first, and then look at what was left in disgust. So the potato had to be given to her separately, otherwise she was disinterested in everything else. Lettuce, garlic, turmeric, because garlic is really good for infections and things like that. Turmeric is really good for inflammation, and cucumber, and a few times I looked down at oats as well. A few times I looked down at this bowl of food I was giving. I was like, God, you eat better than I do. Like, this is amazing. This is so good. And we made sure we Googled everything, made sure she could have everything in question, and she could. It was all fine for her, all very good for her as well. Her poos started smelling like a curry house, which was genuinely very funny. And so we were doing that for, I think it was until the Thursday. And I think on the Thursday, not only was I exhausted, but the prolapse was no longer coming out. So I said, I think tomorrow, so Thursday, I think we should not do the individual times, just do morning and night, see how it does, keep an eye on her, see if when she does a poo it pops back out or if it stays in, give it chance to heal, and give her a little bit of honey in the morning and a little bit of honey at night. And Mum was like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. So I slept that whole day. I was so tired, I just slept. And then the next day she ate her breakfast and then didn't want lunch. And then by bedtime, she was just disinterested and everything seemed wrong. She was ill. Her eyes were half closed. Like I was saying about Maple, she was fluffy. She was unhappy. She was lethargic. She was barely walking. And we were thinking, what the hell has happened? What the fuck? We thought she might have been egg bound, but you can actually feel an egg a lot of the time. So I was running my hand down her and she just felt hollow. You know, there's nothing in there. There's no egg. So I was worried sick. Mom was worried sick. Dad was worried sick. We went through the whole day. I might be a bit off on my timeline. Stress. We went through the whole day and we got to bedtime and I was crying because I genuinely did not think she was going to make it through the night. She hadn't eaten. She seemed in pain. She seemed unwell. She'd pooed, so she wasn't egg bound because egg binding leads to constipation, so she wasn't egg bound. But she was just not well, and I was terrified and I cried. And we told the other ducks to look after her. We put her in with the other ducks. I said, at the end of the day, I think she should be with them. If she does die overnight, she should be with them because she loves them so much and she deserves to not be alone. So we put her in. And then the next morning, we went downstairs and Mom and I went in together and we took the lid off and she was like, "Hi, good morning." And oh my, I cried again. I picked her right up, held her, she climbed up onto my shoulder, she was sitting on my shoulder. We're pretty sure she had a tiny bit of food poisoning. We think that my mom doesn't have a sense of taste or smell particularly. It has nothing to do with COVID, she's always been this way, but she really struggles with scent and taste. And we think that the quinoa that she gave Raptor for breakfast, which we'd smothered in garlic and turmeric because she needed it, was maybe a little bit off and she couldn't tell and she ate it and it was a bit off and she'd had a bit of a painful stomach and a tummy ache for a couple of days. It happens, you know, shit like that happens. And she's fine now. She's absolutely fine now. Mom's being 6 times more careful than she was before, and my mom is always pretty fucking careful about these things. And she's fine. And now I'm really struggling to get out of bed at the moment because I'm so fucking stressed. I am coming back to videos and all the rest of it. Everything seems to be on and up. Everything seems to be getting better. I'm just... Everything's just been so much this month. It feels like March has just been unbelievably, overwhelmingly everything. Just all at once, just everything. So, that is my explanation of why there's been no videos. I don't have a community tab. If I had a community tab, I would have posted this here instead of recording a video. Whatever. So if anyone's interested, here's the explanation. I love my ducks so much. You guys know how much I love my ducks. I love ducks and I love my ducks. And they are my priority. They are my priority. So thank you ever so much for watching. If you have any questions about my ducks, please feel free to leave a comment. I would love to answer questions about my ducks. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more of my ducks, I did start a vlog channel. I do technically have a vlog channel, but I didn't have time to edit anything for that either. I'm probably going to put this up pretty much raw. Like, I'm probably not going to do much editing on this. I'm just going to shove this up and add an end screen. Just thank you for being patient with me. I really appreciate it. I'm technically on hiatus for at least a little while longer while I pull my shit together. I have a few things to get done and sorted. I really want to go back to my everything, actually. I really miss my Paxi and my Paxi and my Nisby. I did actually record an explanation mid-March at the start of my Nisby, which may go up again. I'll just like put a message over it saying, hey, I actually would explain this here, but I never finished editing it because I just didn't have the brain power. I didn't have the brain span. I was going back to bed between every bout of checking on Raptor, and everything was just so stressful and so much. I haven't updated my game yet. I will do at some point. Why does NVIDIA Broadcast think my chair is a... Why does it think my chair is a person? It isn't. Anyway, I don't know what it is. It's good. You can see the lights through it. Anyway, I think that's about all I have to say. Yeah, thanks for watching if you did. If you didn't, then we're not going to get this message out. I will see you next time. Bye!